guys, welcome back to Alex Goes Coconuts. So today I'm actually going to give you my top tips and travel advice for when traveling to China. I actually just got back from a 2-week trip to China. I'm an international buyer, so I go to China twice a year, and I've been traveling down there for about 15 years now. So China is an amazing country. It's just so rich in culture and history, and it has some of the best culinary experiences that I've ever had in my whole entire life. So it's definitely a place that's worth visiting at least once. But China is not the easiest place to travel to just because of the language barrier and the cultural differences. So I decided to make this video to help any first-timers who've never been to China on how to prepare properly and what to expect once you're in China. Okay guys, so I actually recorded all this video and then realized that it was way too long, so I'm actually going to divide this video into 2 parts. Okay, so today I'm just going to cover some key points like what kind of documents you'll need to travel to China. Also, we're going to talk about currency and money, language barriers, and how to get over that hurdle. I'm also going to talk about censorship and staying connected. Okay, so the first thing you're gonna need when traveling to China is you're gonna need to apply for a Chinese visa. Now, I suggest you do this at least 2 months prior to leaving for China. Now, there's 2 ways to apply for a visa. You can either apply in person, either at your Chinese embassy or consulate in your area, or you can mail in your application. So when applying, you're gonna need to submit a filled out application. You're also gonna have to give your passport, and you're also gonna have to provide your flight itinerary. So you gotta make sure that you have your return flight booked before you even apply for the visa. They might also ask you to provide a detailed itinerary. So they wanna know exactly what you're gonna visit in China and where you're gonna stay. So if you're staying with a friend or if it's for business, you will need to also provide a letter of invitation from that person living in China. Now, the visa itself takes about 2 to 3 weeks to obtain. Now, they do have expedited visas, so if you're in a hurry, you can apply for a visa and get it within 10 to 14 days. The second thing you're gonna need when traveling in China is your passport. Now, your passport is gonna be really important to have on you in China. You're not only gonna need your passport to check into your hotel, you're gonna need passports to either buy or even pick up tickets like train tickets or bus tickets, but you're also gonna need your passport sometimes to visit certain touristic sites like certain museums, even like Disneyland Shanghai, for example. They'll ask you for your passport for you to even get into the park. So make sure that you buy like a little pouch or something to hide the passport on you while you're traveling. There's a lot of pickpockets in China, so just make sure that you have it on you and that it's in a safe place so that it won't get pickpocketed. Now, that being said, make sure that you also bring some extra ID just in case you do lose your passport, that you can, get a new passport issued to you by your US Embassy or Canadian Embassy. Okay, so now let's talk about cash and currency. You're gonna need to have cash on you pretty much at all times. Cash is the preferred method of payment in most places. You're gonna need to pay, taxis in cash, and you're gonna have to pay, most street merchants only take cash. China will also only accept its own currency, so the Chinese currency, which is the yuan, also known as RMB. So make sure that you exchange money and that you have some Chinese currency with you at all times. Now, you will be able to use credit cards in most big chain hotels and some upscale restaurants and upscale stores, but for the most part, you're gonna need cash for everywhere else. Okay, so now let's talk about where to exchange your money. I know that it's hard for most people to obtain yuans before they even travel, so I exchange all my money once I get to China. So once I land in China, I exchange about $100 US right there at the airport. It's not the best exchange rate, but at least it gives me just enough money to take a taxi to my hotel and to also pay for some food for that day. Then for the rest of the time, you can actually exchange money using your Interac card at any Chinese bank. There's Chinese banks pretty much everywhere. So you can either go to their ATM and exchange money, or you can exchange it at an exchange office. Now the exchange office has the best prices. So basically once I'm at the hotel, I ask the concierge, where is the closest exchange place, and that way I know that it's a legitimate place, and I go there and I just exchange the money there. That usually gives me the best exchange rate, but sometimes I'm a little bit in a hurry, or I just don't have time to look for an exchange office, so I'll change it at the hotel. And you know, the rate isn't as great as a bank or an exchange office, but it's definitely better than what you would get at the airport, let's just say. Now, I do suggest that you have $200 US on you at all times, just in case that you need money to exchange last minute and that you're in trouble. So it's like kind of like an emergency fund. If you are gonna use your Interact and your credit card, definitely warn your bank of your travel plans, because you don't want any trouble once you get in China. Like your bank might block your Interact card or your credit card because they think that there's like something fishy happening. So what I do is before leaving, I call my banks and my credit cards and just warn them that I will be using the cards in China so that they don't block the interactions. The biggest problem you're gonna have with traveling to China is the language barrier. Most Chinese people do not speak English. Of course, when you go into the big cities and you're in the big chain of hotels, or maybe in some upscale restaurants or upscale stores, sometimes they will have some English speaking personnel, but it's not always a guarantee. A lot of Chinese people do not speak English at all, and that includes the taxis. So getting around in China is quite difficult, and if you get lost, it's really hard to communicate and try to, you know, find your way around. My next tip is definitely to get yourself a language app. So download a translating app on your phone. I know that there's a lot of apps out there, and honestly, the one I've been using and I always use is Google Translate. Google Translate has worked really well for me over the years. Google Translate also has the offline app, which is really practical if you're not connected to the internet. So basically you can just download the language onto your phone, and this is pretty useful. I also really like their feature. They have like a scanning app, so you can scan like a sign or a menu and it translates what's written. So this is really useful sometimes when you're lost or when you're in a restaurant and you don't understand what's on the menu. You can use this scanning app and it'll translate the menu for you so that you can order something that's familiar to you. If you're having trouble using a Google app in China, there's also another app called Baidu Translate. This is the Chinese version of Google Translate, and that one's pretty good. I've used it. I actually use both Google Translate and Baidu app. That's another option for you if the Google Translate, you're having trouble with it. Okay, so the next point I want to talk about is censorship. The Chinese government actually censors everything from media all the way to the internet. So you'll be unable to access certain sites, especially like Google sites, such as Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. You won't be able to use Google search, and you might have some trouble using some of your Google apps on your phone. You also might have some trouble getting your emails, especially if you're using Gmail. So that's definitely something you got to think about before leaving for China. So the way to counteract this is actually to get a VPN. So a VPN will allow you to bypass the firewall that's put up by the Chinese government, and it will allow you to use all your apps and all the sites that you're used to using, just like if you were at home. So paid VPNs are actually more reliable than the free ones, and I highly suggest that you just pay for one. I actually use a company called ExpressVPN, and they work really, really well. It's always worked for me. Now you're gonna want to download the VPNs onto your laptop and your phone or your iPad before you leave for China, because once you're in China, you won't have access to it. Okay, so now let's talk about phone service in China. Phone service isn't always reliable once you get to China, and a lot of places that do have free Wi-Fi, you won't be able to connect unless you have a Chinese cell number, and so unfortunately the Wi-Fi won't always be available to you. So the best thing is to have some kind of 3G network on your phone so that you can stay connected at all times. So to make sure that your phone works while you're in China, you have a few options. Now the easiest way to do this is just to get an international roaming with your phone provider. This is basically what I use. I just, pay an international roaming fee once I get to China. And the best part about it is that I don't have to do anything. As soon as I land in China, all I have to do is turn on my phone, and that's it. I can use the phone just like if I was in Canada. So it just works as soon as I land, and that's why I like it. Now, even though this is the simplest way, it can also be one of the most expensive ways to do it. The international roaming fee each day is about like $12 to $14, so it can add up quite quickly. The second option would be to purchase a Chinese SIM card and then just install it in your phone. The problem with this is that, first of all, you got to make sure that your phone is unlocked, and then you got to pay like a little fee. But the main problem with this is that getting that SIM card to work properly and communicating with the person at the store who's installing the SIM card on your phone, it can take a really, really long time. And there is that language barrier, so it might take you like an hour or two just to set up your phone. So this is worth it if you're staying a really long time in China, but if you're staying a shorter period of time, it's kind of a big hassle to do it this way. Now, if you do want to go that route, I definitely suggest that you do it at the airport, because you're going to have a lot more chances of someone speaking English there and someone being used to setting it up for foreigners. Now, a third option is actually a really simple way. It's just to rent a phone. Basically, there's companies out there that'll loan you a phone. There's one that one of my friends use, and they've been using it for years. It's called cellularabroad.com, and basically she just rents out a phone. She orders it before she leaves. It's delivered to her house, and then she takes that phone with her to China. So as soon as she lands in China, she turns it on and she can use it the same way that I use my phone with my international roaming fees. Thanks again for watching, guys, and don't forget to subscribe if you'd like to see more videos like this one. Happy travels! Bye!